Yo, friends, I'm having some issues with my microphone, which is kind of annoying. But I wonder if it's maybe... Oh no, the neighbors. They must be leaving soon. Anyways, I was having some issues with my microphone. Now, a few things on that. First of all, hopefully it's not going to mess up the episode. That's firstly. Secondly, a friend of mine came over earlier and he forgot his AirPods over here and they were on the dining room table. It's possible. Like, I was trying to wonder, like, manashtana, what's different about today from all the other days, and I saw the AirPods were on the table. So I just moved them to some undisclosed location and I don't know, maybe that... Bluetooth is a problematic technology. All sorts of terrible things happen with Bluetooth. So maybe, it could have been related to that. What else do I have to share with you? So there's that, the Bluetooth. I feel like there was something else I wanted to share with you, but now I can't remember. Now this daf is a tricky little daf, because a sneaky little daf. Not so little, I get. It took me a really long time to review. I was kind of surprised. So I don't know, maybe it's going to end up being like a really long daf, but like sneaky long. I didn't expect it to be a long one. So let's see what ends up happening. So now, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tez Zayin, Daf 16 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, today we talk about Eved Ivri's, Amma Ivriya's, and all things related to the buying and selling and freeing of Eved Ivri's and Amma's Ha'Ivriyas. Eved's Ha'Ivri's and Amma's Ha'Ivriyas. Okay, here we go. Daf Tez Zayin, Amud Aleph. Ready or not? Here we come. Here we come. Ready or not? Here we come. Okay. Here we go or here we come? I think it's here we come. Ready or not? Here we come. Here we come? I think so. Uvishtar. Barampam. So, I really hope that this microphone is not going to give me tsaris. Because microphone tsaris that's what I wanted to say. I was recently watching a video by Casey Neistat, and he totally lost audio on like a whole chunk of the video, and he said, microphones are just unpredictable. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not the only one. I guess randomly microphones just don't work. Yeah, and I guess he could relate. He was doing a daily vlog at one point, and I guess when you have all this footage that's unusable, it's a big pain in the neck. Alright, so now, Tazayin Amud Aleph. So, microphone, if you're listening to me, you have a pretty easy life. You just need to work for 1 hour a day. Just be happy. Alright, we're talking about Eved, Eved Ivri. And Ivri, we said Eved Ivri has to work day and night. You work for maybe half an hour a day, an hour. You got it easy, microphone. Alright. Now, Uvishtar. So says the Gemara in Daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph, Uvishtar, that you can buy a Eved Ivri or Amma Ivriya with a document. Minolan. How do we know this? How do we know that an Eved Ivri or Amma Ivriya can be purchased with a document? Minolan. So how do we know this? Amar Ula says, Amar Kal, the puzzle says, Im acheres yikach lo. Right, it says by an Amma Ivriya that the Adon can marry her, or the son can marry her. Now, if he now it's right. That's what's called Yi'ud. I think we talked about that the other day. So now, if he ends up marrying her, and if he ends up marrying another wife, so we're comparing her, the Amma Ivriya, to the acheres, to the additional wife. So that the pasuk compares an Amma Ivriya to a wife. So just like a wife would be, right, this other wife would be, can be, mikudeshes with a shtar. So oichet, an Amma Ivriya can become an Amma Ivriya with a shtar. So now we get into the details over here. The shaila is, who writes the shtar for an amma ha'ivriya? Now, of course, we know that by Kiddushin, right, that was what we discussed the other day, that there's a chiddush by Kiddushin, that normally the one selling, the one being makneh, would be the one to write the shtar, right? If Shimon is selling his field to Reuven, Shimon would write the shtar. But in the case of Kiddushin, it's the father who's giving his daughter as a wife, and yet it's the husband who writes the shtar. So now, in the case of Amma Ha'ivriya, the shaila is who writes the shtar. So if we say by Kiddushin, it's the husband who writes the shtar, not the father of the daughter, not the father of the bride. So Oichet, it would make sense that if we're talking about, similarly by an Amma Ha'ivriya, who would be the one writing the shtar? The Adon, the master, not the father who is giving his daughter as an Amma Ha'ivriya. Right? Just like the husband is the one to write the shtar by Kiddushin, so it would be the Adon who's the ones to write the shtar by an Amma Ha'ivriya. So So this makes sense to compare the shtar by an Amma Ha'ivriya to the shtar by Kiddushin if you say that it's the Adon who writes the shtar by Amma Ha'ivriya, just like it's the husband who writes the shtar by Kiddushin. But if you say that it is the father who writes the shtar when it comes to an Amma Ha'ivriya, well, that is not like Kiddushin. It's not the father who writes the shtar by Kiddushin, it's the husband who writes the shtar by Kiddushin. So they're under a zachron, they're different in yonim, the Kiddushin and Amma Ha'ivriya. The Itmar, as it's stated by Amoraim, shtar Amma Ha'ivriya mi kosvo, who writes the shtar by an Amma Ha'ivriya? Rav Huna Amar Adon kosvo. So Rav Huna says that it's the Adon who writes it, just like it's the husband who writes it by Kiddushin. Rav Chizda Amar Av kosvo, whereas Rav Chizda says it's Taka, the father, who writes the shtar by an Amma Ha'ivriya. And therefore the comparison between Amma Ha'ivriya and Kiddushin, right, the Kiddushay shtar and the Kinyan Amma Ha'ivriya by a shtar, that makes sense according to Rav Huna, who says that just like it is the husband who writes the shtar Kiddushin, it's the Adon who writes the shtar by an Amma Ha'ivriya. But according to Rav Chizda, who says that it's the father who writes the shtar by the Amma Ha'ivriya, well then, how does he learn out shtar by Amma Ha'ivriya? The shtar by Amma Ha'ivriya is different than the shtar by Kiddushin. The shtar by Kiddushin is written by the husband, not the father, yet the shtar by the Amma Ha'ivriya is written by the father, according to Rav Chizda. So where does he learn out this shtar from? It can't be from Kiddushin. So Amr Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Amr Kros says the pasuk, Lo seitze kiteiso avodim. So the pasuk says, by an Amma Ha'ivriya, Lo seitze kiteiso avodim, she does not go free in the way that avodim knainim go free. Pashup Pshat is, as we're going to see later, that means right, birosha evarim, right? If an Eved Kanani loses his finger, so he goes free. That's not the case by an Eved Ivri or an Amma Ha'ivriya, right? If they lose their finger, they don't go free. They get paid, the damages, but then they have to finish their 6-year service. So now, it says by an Amma Ha'ivriya that she doesn't go free kiteiso avodim, so we want to make a diuk. Avol niknes he kikinyan avodim. We want to say, okay, fine, maybe she doesn't go out kiteiso avodim, but maybe she comes in. The kinyan is kikinyan avodim. Umay niyu. What is the kinyan of an eved? So we're going to learn in a Mishnah soon, I believe in a week or so, that an eved knaini can be niknes Bekesef, beshtar, uvechazoko. So we want to say is what's the kinyan avodim? Umay nihu shtar. We want to say, well, just like an eved kanani can be nikne beshtar. So we're saying lo tzeitze kiteiso avodim. She doesn't go free like avodim kananim go free by roshe evarim, if they lose limbs. However, they are acquired. The kinyan is kikinyan avodim, and we want to say that is bishtar. So we see that the kinyan of an Amma Ha'ivriya can be bishtar. But why are we assuming that when we compare Amma Ha'ivriya to Eved Knaini in terms of the kinyan, it's bishtar? Maybe it's bechazaka. That one way to be Kona and Eved Knaini is that you make him do a little work. You show who's boss. So maybe that is how Amar Ivriya is compared to Eved Knaini by the Kinyan, that it's the Chazaka. They could be Konen Amar Ivriya b'Chazaka, not b'Shtar. So Amar Kra, but the pasuk says, where am I? So Amar Kra, the pasuk says, V'esnachaltem osam livnechem acharechem, that you will inherit an Eved Knaini to your sons after you, right after your death. Osam b'Chazaka, and we're saying specifically Osam in Eved Knaini is nikne b'Chazaka, v'lo acher b'Chazaka, but not anybody else. Ve'ema osam b'Shtar v'lo acher b'Shtar, but maybe I'll say that only an Eved Knaini is nikne b'Shtar, but not anybody else. So haksiv lo seitze kitzeis avodim, to which we say yes, but the pasuk says lo seitze kitzeis avodim, in which we imply, but there is a kinyan, kekinyan avodim, and that is b'Shtar. Umara Isa, but still, the Gemara says, so we go back to the beginning of our initial question. No, we just said, Lo seitze kitzeis avodim, that an Amma Ivriya does not go free in the same way that an Eved Knani goes free if they lose limbs. However, the kinyan is like the kinyan of an Eved Knani. We want to say that is bishtar, but who says? Maybe it could be b'Chazaka. Maybe an Amma Ivriya is niknis b'Chazaka. The sun is coming back. Remember the other day the sun was driving me nuts? I guess I'm recording at a similar time. It isn't so terrible yet, but it might get so soon, in which case I will have to turn sideways again so as to get in a different angle of the sun. Umara Isa, but still, we're going back to our initial question. How come you are saying that the way that we compare the kinyan of an Amma Ivriya to the kinyan of an Eved Knaini is with regard to Shtar? Maybe it's regard to Chazaka. Shtar havalei l'Rabuye. Look, it makes sense to say that the kinyan is bishtar of an Amma Ivriya, shekain motzi b'bas Yisrael, because a shtar works in other places, right? A shtar, you can give a get. Shtar can be used for a get. No, 1 second. Let's say that the Amo Ivriya is niknes b'chazaka, shekain kones b'nichse ager, because chazaka works by nichse ager, right? If a convert passes away and has no relatives, so his property becomes hefker, and whoever, if you go to his property and you put up a fence, you make some kind of chazaka to show that it's yours. So why don't we say that the Amma Ivriya is niknes b'chazaka, just like we see chazaka works in other places, like by nichse ager, be'ishus mias lo ashkechon. But still, if we have to choose between a shtar, which could be used by gerushin, or a chazaka, which could be used by inheriting the property of a ger, gerushin is at least regarded to, related to marriage, and Amo Ivriya is related to marriage, right? An Adon can marry his Amo Ivriya do yiyud, so therefore it makes more sense to compare it to a shtar, which could be used in the context of marriage. Fine. Iba Isema, alternatively, Lahachi Ahane Imacheres. Or, alternatively, according to Rav Chizda, who had said that by the shtar of an Amma Ivriya, it is the father who writes the shtar and gives it to the Adon. So if that was the case, then that's different than the shtar of Kiddushin. So we said that then you can't compare, right, im acheres yikachla, you can't compare the kinyan of an Amma Ivriya to the kinyan of a shtar, kinyan b'shtar by Kiddushin, right, because by Kiddushin it's the husband who writes it, whereas by the shtar by Amma Ivriya, it is the father who writes it, according to Rav Chizda. But still, then how did Rav Chizda learn out that there could be shtar by Amma Ivriya? Well, he learned it out from lo seitze kitzeis avodim. Okay, from which we then imply that yes, but maybe the freedom is not like Eved Knani, but the kinyan is like an Eved Knani. But now we had the shaila. Which kinyan of an Eved Knani? Is it shtar or is it chazaka? Aha. So that is where imacheres yikachlo now comes in handy, according to Rav Chizda. While imacheres yikachlo could not teach us the ikr of kinyan Amar Ivriya bishtar. However, once already we use the pasuk of lo seitze kitzeis avodim to make the diuk of, but the kinyan could be kinyan avodim. But now the shaila is it shtar or is it chazaka? It's shtar. How do we know that it's shtar? Well, that's the point of imacheres yikachla. Imacheres yikachla helps to say, well, just like Kiddushin Isha could be bishtar. So also when we get to the kinyan of an Ama Ivriya, we're not sure, is it talking about, is it compared to an Eved Kanani by shtar or b'chazaka? It's shtar, just like Kiddushin Isha can be bishtar. Wow, yeah, I'm telling you, this daf, it's unassuming. It doesn't look like a big daf, but we're 15 minutes in already, and we're only halfway down the Amud, and we started 5 lines into the Amud. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a sleeper daf. You don't think it's such a big one, but it is. So Rav Huna, who's happy, right? Rav Huna says that it's the Adon who writes the shtar by Ama Ivriya. So if that is the case, then it can be compared to Kiddushin Isha, where the husband writes the shtar. So therefore, we can learn it out from Imacheresi Kachla. Well then, Hai Lo Seitze Kitzei Savadim My Dorish Be. Well then, what does he do with Lo Seitze Kitzei Savadim? Rav Chizda needed it to teach shtar by Ama Ivriya. What does Rav Huna do with it? So Rav Chizda needed it, so what does Rav Huna do with it? Well, it's needed for the simple explanation that Lo Seitze Kitzei Savadim and Ama Ivriya does not go out in the same way that Avadim go out, i.e., if their limbs get popped off. Rav Chizda imkein lichtov kra Lo Seitze Ka'avadim My Kitzei Savadim Shmazmina Taita. Whereas Rav Chizda says, look, if all it was coming to teach was that an Ama Ivriya does not go free if her limbs get popped off, so then it would just say Lo Seitze Ka'avadim My Kitzei Savadim. In addition to the Rosh Ivarim, it also teaches about that she's niknes, right? She doesn't go yotze. She's not yotze Kitzei Savadim, but she's niknes kekinyan ha'avadim. And that is bishtar. Well, I'm so nervous about this microphone. It just like went out again. I'm so nervous. I really don't want to have to record this again, especially because it's like kind of like a long daf. Also, I'm sitting sideways again because the sun is shining right on me. So a lot going on between the microphone and the sun, but hopefully it's going to work out. So v'kona atzmo b'shonim. So in Eved Ivri and Ama Ivriya also goes free after 6 years. The Chsiv, the pasuk says sheishonim yavod v'ashmiyas v'gomer, that he works for 6 years, and then in the 7th year he goes free. Uvayovel and yoichit goes free at the Jubilee year. The Chsiv, the pasuk says ad shnas hayovel yavod imach, he works with you until the Jubilee year. Bigeron kesef and oichit, he goes free. Bigeron kesef, he goes free. He could, if he was bought for 6 dinars for 6 years, so if after 2 years he goes free, so he pays back 4 dinars and he goes free. Okay. So Mechizkiya Damarkas says Chizkiya because the pasuk says vehefdo, and he will redeem her Melamich Migareh Pidyon V'yotza, that the Adon Oichid contributes to her redemption in that he subtracts the amount that she's already worked, and then she goes free. Tana v'kone es atzmo b'kesef. We learn in the Brisa that he can acquire himself back, and Eved Ivri can acquire his freedom b'kesef, with money, uv'shaveh kesef, and with the equivalent of money, uv'shtar, as well as a document. Bishlam kesef. I understand that in Eved Ivri can be koneh himself with money. The Chsiv, as the pasuk says, mi kesef miknoso. It says, I believe this is by a yid who sells himself to an ovid kechavim. So it says that he can essentially pay himself back, get paid back mi kesef miknoso, from kesef. Shaveh kesef nami. We also learn out monetary equivalents. Yoshiv gulaso omer rachmano, that the pasuk says. What does it say? It says, Im od rabos bashan l'fin yoshuv gulaso mikesef miknoso. So it says, Yoshuv gulaso, that he will, right, so the word Yoshuv is extra. Am rachmana l'rabos shave kesef kikesef, to include monetary equivalents like money, currency itself. Elahai shtar heichi dami. What's the dealio with the document? How does it work that an Eved Ivri can acquire his freedom through a document? If it's that he writes a document and gives it to the Adon, and he writes the document that he, I guess, requiring him to pay this, being mechayiv himself for this money, that he has to pay him back. So anu kesef. Well, that's I guess essentially kesef apparently. So ela shichur. So rather, it must be that he can go free with the shtar shichur, with that the adon writes for the fellow, for the Eved Ivri, a document of emancipation. Shtar lama li, but why do I need a document of emancipation? Lema le baipe trey. Let the adon just say to the Eved Ivri in front of two people, zil, go. The assumption is, in that question, that the adon only owns the Eved Ivri on a monetary level, right? What does Rashi say? Rashi says, right, ein gufo kanui, right, in the Dibur Maschil lama li shtar, ein gufo kanui. The Gemara is assuming at this point that the body of the Eved Ivri is not owned by the adon, elo chov mamon avoda sheishanim sheish alav. The adon paid for him for 6 years, and now it's simply a monetary obligation on the side of the Eved Ivri to work in lieu of the payment received. So it's a monetary arrangement. So inami by beidino zil, or let the adon go to a bezdin and say, go away, Eved Ivri. Why do I need a document of emancipation? On my Rava, says Rava, from the fact that the shtar is a document of emancipation, zosomeres Eved Ivri gufo konui. So actually, apparently, the Eved Ivri, his body is owned by the adon. Ve'arav shemachal gerono ein gerono machul. And if the adon wants to just say, meh, it's okay, don't worry about the financial relationship that we have. I paid for you and now you have to work for me. Don't worry about that. If he says that it doesn't work, he actually needs to write a document of emancipation. Okay. Yisera olav amo ivria. Wow, this is so I'm telling you, I'm so uncomfortable right now between the sun that's beaming on me and the microphone that I'm unsure that it's actually working. And this is I'm all over the place. Amar Rish Lakish says, okay, so Yisera olav amo ivria. We said that an Amo Ivria has an additional way that she can be freed, more so than the Eved, and that is Simanim, right? When she becomes a Naira, when she reaches puberty. So Amar Rish Lakish says, Rish Lakish Amo Ivria Kone Esatzma B'Misa So'ov. Says Rish Lakish that actually there's an additional way that an Amo Ha'Ivria can go free, and that is if her father dies. Interestingly enough, she is an Amo Ivria to an Adon. Her father dies, she's no longer an Amo Ivria. Okay, so again, Amo Ivria kones atzma b'misa sa'ov me'irshus Adon. That if her father dies, she's no longer an Amo Ivria. Mikabel chomer from the following logic: Umasimonin she'ein motziin me'irshus av motziin me'irshus Adon. That when she reaches puberty, she is still in the rishus of her father, right? Her father, when she's a minor, her father has access to anything that she makes. He inherits her. He can be mekabel kesef Kiddushin, right? All of these things. When she hits puberty, nothing changes, right? He still has rights to the things that she makes, etc. Yet motzei merishus adon. Yet, in Amo Ivria comes puberty, she becomes a Naira, she's no longer in Amo Ivria, she goes free. So, puberty, which makes no difference in her relationship with her father, in terms of, his rights to her stuff, it does make a difference in the relationship with her Adon. Misa shomutzer me'irshus av, but death, that if her father dies, her brothers don't inherit her, she gets her own stuff now. So death that frees her from her, control of her father. Certainly, then death should be the death of the father should be able to release her from being an Amma Ha'ivriya. That is Rish Lakish's argument, that the death of the father releases her from being an Amma Ha'ivriya. Okay, it says Meisve. We could change it to the Agos V'Tzunim changed it to Mosiv, which I think makes more sense because it's Mosiv Rav Oshaya. Rav Oshaya asked the following kasha: But our Mishnah had said, Yisere olav amo ivriya shekona es atzma b'simonin. That the Mishnah had said that there is an additional way that an Amo Ivriya goes free, which is not the case by an Eved Ivri, and that is when she reaches puberty. Ve'im Isa, now if Rish Lakish is right, that there's another way. If her father dies, she goes free. Nisnei Nami Misasov, so in the Mishnah should Oichid list, if her father dies, she goes free. Not just when she reaches puberty, but also if her father dies, she goes free. Tana Vishir. So the Gemara says, well, the Mishnah was not scientific about it. The Mishnah was not exact about it. Yes, it mentioned that there's an additional way that she goes free, i.e. when she reaches puberty. But you know what? It wasn't an exhaustive list. There's another one, and that is when her father dies. My shir, the high shir, to which the Gemara says, not so fast. If the Mishnah was not so precise, it was not so exact, and it left out other examples, such as if her father dies, what are other examples that it left out, right? Apparently it wasn't an exhaustive list. Apparently it left out a whole bunch of things, one of which was if her father dies. Give me other examples of things that the Mishnah left out. Shi'ar mi sasa adam. Well, for example, if the Adon dies, she goes free. So, and it didn't list that. Well, imishu misa sa'adon lav shiurahu. No, that doesn't count. That isn't really a something that it left out, because the cave in the ikonami beish lo katani. Because since the Mishnah says that by a nirtza, a doorman also goes free when the Adon dies. So we see that the death of the Adon is not something entirely unique to an Amo Ivriya. So ve'ela nisnei. So if that's the case, so then back to our question: if Rish Lakish is right that the Amo Ivriya goes free when her father dies, well then it really should be listed in our Mishnah, right? She goes free by puberty. She goes free when her father dies. So Tana davar sheyesh lo kitzba katani, davar she'ein lo kitzba lo katani. To which the Gemara says, well, the Mishnah was only listing things that have an objective criteria. When her father dies is not an objective thing. Who knows when her father is going to die? It could be any time. We need exact things that are predictable that allow her to go free. But 1 second, what's the example that the Mishnah said that she goes free? If her when she reaches puberty, she has 2 pubic hairs. So that's not an exact time. So Amr of Safar Elim Kitzba Lamaila Val Yeshlem Kitzba Limato. Well, they might not have. I don't totally get. I think maybe I get this. It's a little bit confusing. I think that they don't have an exact time, the upper range, but they have an exact lower range. Let's go weiter for a second. The Tanis we learn in the Brisa Ben Teisha Shonim Shevish Te Cyrus. If she's 9 years old and she has 2 Cyrus, Shuma, we just assume that it's a mole. It's not actually pubic hairs. That would mean that she reached puberty. Ben Tes Shonim V'Yom Echad Ad Ben Yud Beis Shonim V'Yom Echad, from 9 until 12. 9 in a day until 12 in a day. The Odan bone, she still has these hairs. Shuma, we still say it's a mole, but not that she's reached puberty. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda Simin, no, it means that she has reached puberty. Ben Yud Gimel Shana, when it comes to when she's 13, V'Yom Echad in a day, Divrei Kol Simin, everybody agrees that she has reached puberty. So I think the point is that everyone agrees that the lower range is 9 years old. That prior to 9 years old, it's not these hairs are not an indication of puberty. The upper range, I guess, is machlokas, right? Machlokas, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and the Chachamim, I guess, whether it's prior to 13 years or not. Okay, but definitely the lower range of 9 years is an objective thing, and therefore that's why the simanim was, right, the pubic hairs was listed in the Mishnah. However, when her father dies, which is not objective, it's whenever it happens, that was left out of the Mishnah. Okay. Mosiv Rav Sheshes v'Rib. So Mosiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes, however, asks the kasha. Reb Shimon, Omer says Reb Shimon, Dalid Ma'nikim Loim, that there are 4 examples of an Eved Ivri / Amo Ivriya that when they go free, they get gifts from their Adon. Gimel Ba'ish v'Gimel Ba'isha Now, 3 of these examples are by an Eved Ivri, and 3 of these examples are by an Ama Ivriya. But you cannot say that all 4 apply to either one of them. Only 3 out of 4 will apply to each of the Ama Ha'ivriya and the Eved Ha'ivri. All 4 cannot apply to either one. Lefi she'ein simonim ba'ish, because there are no simonim when it comes to an Eved Ivri. An Eved Ivri does not go free when he reaches puberty. Ve'in ritzia ba'isha, and there are no door women. As we've learned, there's only door men. There are not door women. And we want to say that the 4 examples are 6 years. After 6 years, right, both the Eved Ivri and the Ama Ivri go free. The Jubilee year, both the Eved Ivri and the Ama Ivri go free. And then the ones that are unique are that in so we want to say for now that what it means is that a doorman goes free when the master dies, and an Amma Ivriya goes free b'simonim, when she reaches puberty. Vim Isa, now if Rish Lakish is right, that there's also the example of when her father dies, Nisne Nami Misas Av, we should also have the example of Misas Ha'av, when her father dies, but that is not one of the examples. So v'chitem, and if you're going to say hacha nami tana v'shir, and if you're going to say, look, it's not an exhaustive list, there are other things that were left out. V'ha'arba'a katani, but it says specifically that there are four examples. That there are 4 examples, no more, no less. So there's 4 examples, and when her father dies, it's not one of them. And if you're going to tell me that, well, it was only talking about things that have sort of a predictable time, but when her father dies is not predictable. But we mentioned that that Amma Ivriya goes free when she reaches puberty, and that's not a predictable time per se. And if you can say, well, we said like Rav Safra that it's predictable on the lower range, the 9 years old. Misas Adon de'ein loem kitzpa v'katoni. But we mentioned that the doorman goes free when the Adon dies. Now that's not predictable. But Misas Adon Nami Lo Katani, no, actually one of the 4 is not that the doorman goes free when the Adon dies. Well then, if one of them is not that the doorman goes free when the Adon dies, well then what are the 4 examples? So Shanim, after 6 years, okay, that applies both to the Eved Ivri and the Amma Ivriya. The Yovel, the Jubileer, that also applies both to the Eved Ivri and the Amma Ivriya. The Yovel shall Ritzia, and also a doorman goes free at Yovel, the Amma Ivriya, and, right, so meaning the first Yovel is by a regular Eved Ivri, by the doorman, we talk about Yovel for a doorman, the Amma Ivriya, B'simanim, and the 4th one being that the Amma Ivriya goes free when she reaches puberty. So none of the examples are about the death of the Adon, and therefore we're saying that the Brisa leaves out examples of death because they're not predictable, including the death of her father. Hachinami Mistabin. It also makes sense that these are the 4. Dikatoni Seifa I Ato Yochol Lomar Arba Be'echod Meim, because we had said that you cannot apply all 4 examples to either the Amma Ivriya or the Eved Ivri. Lefisha ain't simonim beish, because there is no simonim. There's no right. A Eved Ivri does not go free at puberty. Ve'ein ritzia beisha, and there's no door women. Ve'im isa. But if one of the 4 examples was the Misa Sa'adon, Be'isha Mia Mishkachas La'arba Shmamina, right? We would be able to have 4 examples by the Isha, right? We said that you can't have all 4 examples by either the Eved Ivri or the Amma Ivri. You can only have 3 of them. But if one of the examples was the Misa Sa'adon also applies to the Amma Ha'ivriya, that if the Adon dies, she goes free. So rather it must be that the death of the Adon is not one of the 4, and we leave out death because it's not predictable, and that is also why we leave out the death of her father, because it is unpredictable. But really, you can argue that Rish Lakish is right, that if her father dies, she goes free. Mosiv Rav Amram asks a kasha. ve'elu mainikim loim, that the following Eved Ivris receive gifts when they go free. Hayotze bashonim, after 6 years, if the Eved Ivri or the Amor Ivri goes free. Uvayovel, at the Jubilee year, they go free. Uvmisas Adon, if the Adon dies. The Amo Ha'ivri b'simonim, and additionally, the Amo Ivriya goes free when she reaches puberty. The Im Isa, now if Rish Lakish is right that the Amo Ha'ivriya also goes free when her father dies, Nisne Nami Misas of, well then the 4 examples, there should be an additional one. There should be an additional one. Also when the father dies, she goes free. And if you're going to tell me, well, it's not an exhaustive list, there are others, such as an Amar Ivriya going free when her father dies. Va'elu katani. But the Braisa Dafka said, Ve'elu manikim. These are the examples. These no more and no less. And if you're going to say, well, the Braisa was only listing things that are predictable. But the things that are unpredictable were left out, such as if her father dies. But puberty doesn't have a predictable time. And it's listed. And if you're going to say, well, no, it's like Rav Safra who says that the earlier range is predictable. Ha'ika misas Adon, yeah, but it includes Misas Adon, when the Adon dies, and that is unpredictable, and yet it was listed. So therefore it would follow that if the Misas Ha'av was something that would allow the Amo Ivriya to go free, it should also be listed, because after all, it mentioned the Misas Ha'adon, which is unpredictable. So Tiyuvta, the Rish Lakish, Tiyuvta, so that is Taka Akasha on Rish Lakish, and it would seem that an Amo Ivriya does not go free when her father dies. But Rish Lakish didn't make this up out of nowhere. It was logical. It was a Kal V'chomer, right? That if she goes free, if she doesn't go free from her father b'simanim, but she does go free from the Adon b'simanim, and yet she does go free from her father by his death, so then she should definitely go free from the Adon by his death. So what do you do with that Kal V'chomer? So Omar Kal V'chomer Pricha hi. So the Gemara says, well, I'm sorry, so Kavachomer Pricha hi. Well, it's not really a great Kavachomer. Mishum Deika Lemifrach, because you can ask, Malis Simanin, I understand why she goes free from the Adon when she reaches puberty. Shenishtina Aguf, her body has changed at that point. Tomar B'misa Sa'av, why should you say that she goes free when her father dies? Shekain Lo Nishtina Aguf, her body didn't change at all when her father died, and she remains an Amo Ivriya until she goes free for one of the other reasons. Tani Chada, we learned in one Braisa, Anak Eved Ivri La'atzma v'Anak Amo Ivri La'atzma. So one Braisa says that the gifts that go to an Eved Ivri go to him and to nobody else, and the gifts that go to an Amo Ivriya go to her and to nobody else. But we have another Braisa that says Anak Amo Ivriya, that the gifts of an Amo Ivriya when she goes free, umitziyasa, as well as at any point, anything that she finds, even while she's an Amma Ivriya, the Aviyah, both her gifts and anything that she finds belongs to her father. And when she's an Amma Ivriya, anything that she finds goes to her father, and the only part of it that the Adon can get is, if she was wasting work time to pick it up, so the wasted time is owed to the Adon, but other than that, it goes to her father. So my love, so let's say, let's say, so in what case does she keep her gift, right? One Braisa said she keeps her gift, the other Braisa says that her father gets her gift. Well, let's say she keeps her gift her father gets her gift when she is freed, when she hits puberty, and she gets her own gift when she's freed because her father died. Her father dies and she goes free. So there you go. It's like Rish Lakish, that when her father dies, she goes free. So the Gemara says, Lo nisht idi v'idi tenafkalo b'simonin. Both cases are talking about where she goes free when she hits puberty, right? Meaning she does not go free when her father dies. She goes free when she hits puberty. Okay, now in which case does she keep her gift, and in which case does her father get the gift? Well, it depends if her father is alive or not. When her father dies, she doesn't go free. She remains in Amo Ivria until her term is up. Now, when she goes free, if her father is alive, so then she gets the gifts. No, if her father is alive, her father gets the gifts. If her father is not alive, then she gets the gifts. So I understand why we have to say that the gift of an Amma Ivriya goes to herself, limute achin, to the exclusion of her brothers, right? That if her father is not alive, so then the gifts go to her, not to her brothers. Titania, as we learn in the Brayse, that your avodim knainim are inherited by your heirs. That an Eved Knaini is inherited by the heirs, but not your daughters, right? Once the father dies, anything that the daughters made are kept to themselves, right? They can keep it. So we see that the zchus that a father has from his daughter is not bequeathed to the children, and therefore to the sons, and therefore when an Amma Ivriya goes free and she gets gifts, if the father is not alive, the gifts, she keeps them. So Ella Anok Eved Ivri La'atzmo Pshita. But to say that the gifts of an Eved or Ivri go to him, obviously they go to him. Who else? Ella Laman. Who else are they going to go to? So Amr of Yosef Yud Kairos. So if Yosef says, look, we're making a whole big deal out of nothing, right? It mentioned that the gifts of an Amma, that of an Eved Ivri go to him. We really didn't need to have that in the Brayse. It doesn't serve any purpose. Of course it goes to him. Who else is it going to go to? Yud Kairos Kochazino Acho. Abai Omar, whereas Abai says, no, Hachi Omar of Sheshes, this is where Rav Sheshes says, Hamani tutoihi, Detanya tutoi Omer, lo v'lo lebal chovo. That it's like we learned the other day, that in Eved Ivri receives the gifts, it doesn't go to anybody who he owes money to, right? It's not like the Shibuda, it's not like Reb Nosson who says that you can give it to the third, if Reuven owes Shimon money, Shimon owns Levi money, Levi can collect from Reuven. No. Don't worry about who's collecting the gifts. Go to the Eved Ivri. Gufa, we said earlier, Elu Mainikim Loim, that these are the Avodim Ivrim who receive gifts. Hayotze Bashonim Uvayovel, and Eved Ivri who goes free after 6 years. Uvayovel, or at the Jubilee year. Uvemisas Adon, or when the Adon dies, the Amma Ivriya, as well as an Amma Ivriya B'Simonim, an Amma Ivriya goes free when she reaches puberty. Aval Boreach, but if the bugger runs away, V'yotze Begeron Kesef, or he buys back his freedom by paying off the remaining time, Ein Manikim Lo, in that case, in both of those cases, if he runs away, or if he buys his freedom back, so then he does not receive gifts when he leaves. Reb Meir Omer says, Reb Meir, Boreach ein ma'anikin lo, that if he runs away, we don't give him gifts. V'yotze b'geron kesef ma'anikim lo, but if he goes free because he bought himself back, so then, if they're based on the remainder of how much time is left, so then we do give him gifts. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Arba ma'anikim loim, as we saw earlier, that there are 4 types of Eved Ivris that receive gifts. Shlosha be'ish v'gimel be'isha, 3 by a Eved Ivri, 3 by an Amma Ivriya. V'i ata yachol lomar arba be'echad man. You cannot say that all 4 examples apply to either an Eved Ivri or an Amma Ivriya. Lefi she'ein simonin ba'ish v'ritzia ba'isha, because after all, in Eved Ivri does not go free at puberty, and in Amma Ivriya there's no door women, there are only door men. Minan Emile, how do we know that these examples of people, of these Eved Ivris and Amma Ivriyas who get gifts? The Tanu Rabban, as we learn in the Brayse, Yachol lo yu ma'nikim ela liyotze b'sheish. I might think that the only people that get gifts are the ones who go free after 6 years. Minayin l'rabos yotze by Yovel uvmisa sa'adon ve'Amma Ivriya b'simonin. How do I know that they receive gifts? Even when they go free at the Jubilee year, or when the Adon dies, or an Amma Ivriya who goes free when she reaches puberty, how do we know that in these examples they oichet get gifts? It says that you will send away the Eved Ivri. So, and then it says v'chis shalchenu. And so meaning it says a double lashon of tishachenu to include all of these cases that they get gifts. Is it possible that I would include even a bugger who runs away or who buys himself back, buys back his freedom? Right, that when you send him chavshi free me'imach from you, misha shilucho me'imach, it has to be, right, you only get gifts, right? It says v'chisa shalchenu chavshi me'imach losu shalchenu reikam, right? It says when you send him free from you, don't send him empty-handed, give him gifts. So yotzo boreach, to the exclusion of somebody who runs away, v'yotzo bigeron keser, for somebody who buys himself back, shein shilucho me'imach, who's not, you didn't send him away, he sent himself away. Right, either he ran away or he brought himself back. Rav Meir Omer says, Rav Meir boreach ein ma'nikin lo, that somebody who runs away, we don't give him gifts. De ein shilucho me'imach, because you didn't send him away. Aval yotze bigeron kesef, but somebody who buys himself back, then you do give him gifts to shilucho me'imach, because he is being sent from you. I think it's because the other one is also contributing to he's deducing from the amount that he paid from the price. Okay. Boreach hashlama bai, but 1 second, but if a fellow runs away, he's gonna have to come back and finish his term, right? Meaning if he's supposed to be an Eved for 6 years, he runs away after 4 years, they find him, he's gotta go back and do the rest of the other 2 years. So at the end of the 6 years, he completed his term. Shouldn't he receive gifts? Right? At the end of the day, he's not taking any shortcuts. So the Tanya, as we learn in the Brayso, how do we know that an Eved, if he runs away, is going to have to make up the time? It says, well, he's got to work for 6 years. So if he runs away after 4 years, he's got to come back and finish up the remaining 2. So Yochel afilu chala, is it possible that even if he was sick, he's going to have to make it the time? What if after 4 years he gets sick for 2 years? Does he have to now stand another 2 years to make up for the time he was sick? It says no. In the 7th year you go free. If you were sick, we don't hold it against you. The 7th year you go free. Omer of Sheishes says of Sheishes achav mayaskinon. So here what are we talking about? Kigon, meaning so back to our question, right? If he ran away, he's just gonna have to make up the time anyways. So why shouldn't he receive the gifts? Well, I was talking about somebody who ran away, but then the Jubilee year came before he made up his time. Well, then the Adon lost time when he ran away, and now comes the Jubilee year and he goes free, so now he doesn't get the gifts. I may have thought, well, since the Jubilee year arrived, so it's considered that that he's being sent away from the Adon. We shouldn't find the Eved. We should give him gifts. Kamash Malon, that no, we don't give him gifts. Okay, fine. I'm exhausted. I don't know. I think just everything was just exhausting. The sun, the microphone. Hopefully there are no issues with the microphone. I'm going to take a deep breath and we got one last chunk. We said earlier, Yachol afilu chala. Is it possible that even if he got sick, he would have to make up the time that he was sick? It says no, he goes free in the 7th year. He doesn't have to make up for the sick time. Afilu chala kol sheish. What, right? So even if he was sick all 6 years, he just can get away without doing any work. We have a price that says if he worked for 3 years and he was sick for 3 years, he does not need to make up for any of the sick time. But if he was sick for all 6 years, he does need to make up the time. Well, if he was at least able to do some very, very basic work like sewing and stuff, then he doesn't need to wait any extra time. Hagufa kasha. Now he said, 1 second, I don't understand. Omar, on the one hand you said chalosh shalosh v'avad shalosh ein chayiv la'ashlim, that if he was sick for 3 and worked for 3, he doesn't need to make up the lost time. Ha'arba, but if he was sick for 4 years, chayiv la'ashlim, he would have to make up the lost time. Ema seifa, but then it says chala kol sheish chayiv la'ashlim, hadalet ein chayiv la'ashlim. But then we say if he's sick for all 6 years, then he needs to make it up. But if he was implying that if he was only sick for 4 years, he wouldn't have to make it up. That if he was sick for 4 years, we treat it as if he was sick all 6 years, and he would need to make up the time. Cheved, that was daf Tezayin of Masechta Kiddushin, a sleeper daf. It didn't seem like such a long daf, but it is. And I hope that the microphone worked out. Peace out.